I'm your host, Capt.Vijay, and my co-host, Capt.Gajanan Karanjikar. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, everyone, and Vijay, to you also. Very nice going with this Pilot Ki Baat episodes for the AIMPA and for the benefit of pilots. I'm sure a lot of people are watching this. And who's the guest today?
Well, sir, today we have a great personality. He also featured in your AIMPA journal as well.
Oh, that's nice. Must be a very hell of a pilot.
He is. He has been close to 47 years in maritime industry. He is Captain Malcolm Goodfellow. Presently, he is a check pilot at Newcastle for last 6 years, and he has been a Newcastle pilot for the last 17 years. Prior to piloting, he was the surveyor in charge of Newcastle and an examiner of mates and masters for AIMPA. He is also a licensed compass adjuster for over 30 years and conducts part-time lecturing on magnetic compass and magnetism. Did I miss anything, sir, about a great guest today?
No, absolutely right. Malcolm, I've spoken to him many times, and he also wrote an article for our AIMPA journal regarding his accident. And it's good you called him this time because then we can ask him certain questions about the accident and investigation. Because it is very important to know from a first-hand information from a pilot who has been involved in a personal accident. Malcolm is a great personality. Of course, he's a very good presenter, very good talker, and he's been, with Newcastle Port for a very long time. He's been assisting port in, various accident investigation and things like that. So he will have a better perspective of his own accident as well as, personal accident that he had. He had a fall from the ladder, and we will know more about it. And I think there will be a lot of takeaways for pilot in terms of what to do and what not to do when embarking and disembarking pilot ladder. That becomes a very crucial job of a pilot than navigation because he has to climb on the trust that the ship's crew has done well with the ladder and they have tied the ladder properly. So apart from that, there's a lot happens on pilot's mind when he's climbing and disembarking. So we need to really ask him a few questions, and I'm sure he will be able to explain us very well, which will be benefiting to all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I have not seen any pilot accident yet so far, but this will be my first time that I'll be speaking to somebody who had this unfortunate accident with him. So it will be nice to have this first-hand information. I did read about him in the article, and it would be interesting to ask him many such questions. So let's not wait. Let's get Captain Malcolm Goodfellow on board.
Yes, definitely.
A very good morning to you, Captain Malcolm, sir. Welcome on board show Pilot Talks, Pilot Ki Baat.
Thank you, Vijay.
Welcome, Michael. Good morning to you. Let me introduce Vijay. Vijay is a young master mariner. He has done one ship in command, and he is necessarily YouTuber. When I say YouTuber, that means he likes to come on the YouTube, he likes to come on the videos, likes to talk to people, likes to learn from them.
Good.
So he is basically a role model for the people who want to learn things out of his videos. So we have roped him in as AIMPA and said that if he can help us interviewing people like you who care about pilots and pilotage, irrespective of the country, irrespective of the issues that you have and want to share knowledge. So Vijay is somehow connected to us in connecting you guys, and he is then going to edit the video and things like that.
Exactly.
So Vijay, thank you very much for your listening, and
my pleasure, sir.
I think we should start with the Malcolm first. And Malcolm, what comes to my heart? Thank you for accepting this invitation of coming on video first. And I've read your incident report, and we also got it printed in the AIMPA journal. But I don't know how many pilots read that because today's reading habits are very bad. People don't read. People don't read books. People don't read articles. Wow. So now, if you could be kind enough to, narrate the incident as to how it happened, it will be great for the viewers.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Kajanan. Well, you've seen my article, and which I sent to Reshma to publish in your magazine, and it's very good for that. And one of the things I said after my accident, and I was very lucky I wasn't killed, but one of the things I said, if other pilots around the world learn from my accident and take some of the lessons out of it, it may well save another person's life. And I believe if it saves one pilot's life in the future, my accident is worth it. And so that was the way I rationalised what happened to me, and it was a life-changing event. But anyway, just briefly, what happened? I was on shift at night, and Newcastle is a very big port in Australia. It's one of the biggest bulk ports in the world, and 80% of our transfers occur by helicopter, and normally 20% by pilot boat. And so normally all the bulk carriers that meet the requirements for helicopter transfer, pilot transfer occurs by helicopter. Anyway, on this particular night, it was in January 2019. It was a very hot, that's our summer, a very hot, sticky night, very humid. And for whatever reason, because of the visibility that night, the helicopter could not fly. So our normal procedure then is that it reverts back to a pilot cutter if the helicopter can't fly because of flight aviation rules. So my first job for the night was a 300-metre loaded bulk carrier departing Newcastle Harbour. So that went out okay. Now the weather conditions on this particular night were not very good at all. We had I don't know if anyone in your organisation is familiar with Newcastle, but Newcastle is a very, very exposed port to the weather, and we have big swells and very changeable weather conditions. And so it's not unusual in Newcastle to get 8-metre swells off the entrance, and but in our worst conditions, we've had 15-metre swells at the entrance, believe it or not. But anyway, that aside. But on this particular night, we had a very confused weather pattern. We had 30 knots of southerly wind, and so that was pushing about a 2.5 to 3 metre southerly swell. And we also had a southerly sea, and we had an easterly swell from a previous weather event. So we had probably 2 or 3 metres of easterly swell and a 2 or 3 metres of southerly sea. So the whole lot was sort of mixing like a big washing machine going around in a big circle. And the period of the swell and the waves was a very short period for Newcastle, only 7 seconds. So normally the period of our sea and swells here in Newcastle are around the 10 to 15 second mark. This particular night it was 7 seconds, so very, very short period. So straight away in the back of your mind, you know, if there's a very short period, the pilot boat is going to be moving up and down very, very quickly, and as we all appreciate. So anyway, I got off my departing ship, and that was okay. She was a 300-metre long ship, fully loaded, 200,000 tons, and put it into a turning lee, and then it makes a good lee. And I got off on a pilot ladder, combination pilot ladder. That was all acceptable. And then I was going across to my inbound ship now, which was a vessel called the Spring Pride, a Cape-size bulk carrier. So she had rigged a combination ladder. Freeboard was more than 9 metres, so it was a combination pilot arrangement. Anyway, we came alongside, and in my piloting, I've been a pilot nearly 19 years now, and in that time I've done well over 4,000 transfers, and out of those transfers, well over 1,000 pilot boat transfers. So not to be, I've never ever been blasé or take it for granted about getting on and off a ship. It's one of the most hazardous things you can do in the world is a pilot transfer, and we all agree on that. And it's noted for that around the world. It's probably the most dangerous activity anyone can do is jumping off something that is moving onto something that is moving and hope that you hang on. And most people I talk to who aren't mariners cannot believe what we do as marine pilots. They say, you've got to be crazy. I said, well, there's no other way of doing it, but that's what they say. You've got to be crazy. But anyway, and so anyway, it was the conditions were terrible, and we came alongside the ship, and the pilot boat was ranging up and down 3-4 meters very quickly. Very short period of sea and swell, 7 seconds, and so 1 minute the pilot boat's up here, next minute it's dropped down 3 meters, and it's unusual, but not too unusual. I mean, I've been in those conditions before, and we have very strict procedures in Newcastle and most Australian ports. We probably in Newcastle probably have the strictest pilot cutter transfer work instructions, and they've been enhanced even more after my accident. We can talk about that a little bit later. But so anyway, we came alongside the ship, and the crew member on the pilot cutter, he went out, and the duty of the crew member is to check the pilot ladder visually and physically. So he will grab the ladder and the man ropes and pull them with his body weight, make sure everything stays where it is, nothing falls apart. And the pilot then is tethered. We have a tether, and we go on the outside of the pilot boat, on the outboard side, on a traveller, and we get to the bow of the pilot boat. We are still tethered to the pilot boat. We don't unhook yet, and we're assessing the conditions all the time. So because the way the boat was moving so quickly, I was assessing the conditions for probably a minute or so, and the boat was rising, falling very quickly, and the ship was quite steady, but the pilot boat was moving, and I'd already tried to get the ship onto it the best lee possible, and that was on a similar course to what I'd taken the previous 300-meter ship out on, which was the best lee. And so anyway, it came time to get on the pilot ladder, and so I was waiting. When it's about time to get on, we unhook on our tether, and we're holding onto the rails on the front of the pilot boat, and the boat came up and just was sitting on the crest of the wave, and I said to the crew member, now, I'll go now, and I went for the side ropes of the pilot ladder. My hands grabbed the side ropes, my foot was just going on one of the rungs, and the boat disappeared from under me. It just disappeared from under me, and it just went down into a trough, and I wasn't on the ladder. So suddenly my whole body weight fell onto my hands, and I just fell back. And there is no way you can hold on. And anyone who says you can hold on with your arms if your legs come off the pilot ladder is absolutely joking, because they've never had. You cannot do it. I weigh 100 with my pilot gear on. I probably weigh about 125 kilos, and all that load comes onto your two hands, and your hands cannot hold on. And so I just fell back, and it was an extremely scary experience. It only took a second or so, and I thought I'm dead. That's it. That was the only thought that went through my head, that I'm going to be killed or seriously injured. And our procedures in Newcastle, as soon as the pilot is safely on the ladder, the pilot boat pulls away from the ship's side. So if the pilot does fall in the water, he won't land on the boat. And if he does fall off the ladder, he won't land on the boat. The boat didn't have time to pull away from the ladder. As soon as the boat went down in the trough, my hands came away, and I was free falling. And I'm not sure how far I fell. They say maybe around 3 meters, which for most people doesn't sound a lot to fall. Take it from me, 3 meters is a long way to fall. And it's doctors have told me that 3 meters, your body's accelerating. You're nearly hitting at about 30 kilometers an hour after 3 meters of fall. So you're moving very quickly. And anyway, so I land, and the idea in your head is that, hang on, if I go between the boat and the ship's side, I'm going to be crushed to death. If I land in the water, I may well drown. And if I land on the pilot boat, God knows what's going to happen. But anyway, I land on the pilot boat, and all I felt was this almighty crash. I land on there, massive pain through my back. I thought, oh my God, I'm a paraplegic. And anyway, intense pain. I didn't know what had happened to me, totally frightened. the pilot boat was still going up and down 3 meters very quickly, and I'm untethered on the front of the boat, just laying there. I could have fallen over the side, and the crew member very quickly got around me and held me so I couldn't go over the side. One of the first things I said to him, I said, please tether me back to the boat so I can't fall over the side, because the pilot boat was moving so violently. And anyway, there I'm lying there, lots of pain, and the first instinct was that, hang on, I'm still alive. And I thought, well, that's something. And the next thing I felt was I need to sort of touch my body and make sure everything's okay, because as we all know as pilots, if you get caught between the pilot boat and the ship, you either lose an arm or a leg or whatever. You normally get pretty gruesome injuries. And I was lying there, lots of pain, and I'm with my right hand, I'm sort of feeling my body, and I couldn't find my left arm. And I thought, it's come off. That was the first thing that I thought. I thought I've lost my left arm. And I thought, well, I've lost my left arm. I can't do much about that. And so the next thing I thought was, well, I'll wiggle my fingers and toes, because we all know that if you can wiggle your fingers and toes, you're not a quadriplegic. And so I was wiggling my fingers and toes, and I thought, well, my left arm's missing, but I'll try and wiggle my left fingers, and I was wiggling my left fingers, but scratching the outside of my right leg. Right now, that didn't sort of, in my mind, sound logical, and but the reason that's what was happening was because my left arm was wrapped totally across my back and hanging down the other side of my body. So my left fingers were actually scratching the outside of my right thigh. That's where my arm was, and it was like, if you can imagine lying on a beach towel, that's what my arm was across my back. It was totally across my back, and I was lying on this thing, felt like a beach towel rolled up, and that was my arm. Anyway, so I thought, I'm in all sorts of strife now. And but anyway, we were 5.5 miles out at sea when this happened, and the cutter master and the crew member, they made the exact correct call in not trying to get me back very quickly. The temptation, of course, our pilot boat can do 30 knots, and the temptation was to come back very, very quickly. But they resisted doing that, and they came back at very slow speed, so that I wasn't bounced around. I couldn't move. I thought I had spinal injuries. I was on the front of the pilot boat. Water was washing over us as we're coming back. The crew member was tucked in around me with his legs holding my head in case I had spinal injuries, reassuring me, all that type of thing. And it took 45 minutes to get from where I had the accident back into the port. 45 minutes, and you're just like, there's no pain relief on our pilot boats, there's no nothing. And eventually, I mean, the adrenaline of having an accident sort of lessens the pain. And I've spoken to many doctors since, and they say, well, when you have severe trauma, your brain emits certain endorphins or whatever it is, and that sort of numbs the pain a little bit. And that's probably true, but eventually things were starting to get quite sore. 45 minutes lying on the back, and you're panicking. You don't know whether you're bleeding internally. You don't know whether you're a cripple. All this sort of stuff. And so in the meantime, the pilot, the cutter master had radioed to our VTIC, our traffic centre, saying that there'd been a major accident with me, and they notified the rescue services. And so 45 minutes before the pilot boat got back to the pilot station, I hadn't moved in all that time. I was just laying on the deck. Afterwards, after I'd spoken to the cutter master and the crew member way after the event, they thought I'd died. When I hit the deck, I didn't move for about 30 seconds. Apparently, I don't remember this, but they said I didn't move a muscle for 30 seconds, and they thought I was instantly dead, and that was their thing. And they said my head, as it came down, missed the rails on the front of the pilot boat by about 2 centimeters, and that would have just instantly killed me anyway. So very, very fortunate and lucky. Anyway, the emergency services came, and it was a public holiday, believe it or not. in Australia. It was the Australia Day holiday, and the emergency services were not aware or alert of what we do as marine pilots. And the emergency call was made, and the VTIC had told them that, hang on, we've had a pilot have an accident, he's fallen off a pilot ladder, but the emergency services aren't aware what we do, and they just thought it was a person who's fallen off a pilot ladder, and they didn't know what a pilot ladder was, and they just thought someone's fallen off a ladder and hurt themselves. And so anyway, it took them quite some time to respond, even though we have the ambulance services is right near where we work. But they got there by the time the pilot boat came back. They had just arrived, so it took them half an hour to get to the port centre, and they're only 2 kilometres up the road. Can you believe it? And that because they didn't appreciate the seriousness of the injuries I could have had. Anyway, and we get into the dock in the port centre, and it's probably different in India, but in Australia, the emergency services will not carry you on a stretcher across any opening where they can fall and drop you. So our pilot boat and the wharf we tie the pilot boat up, there's a gap. There's about a half a metre or 1 metre gap where you have to step across, which is totally crazy. So the emergency services wouldn't carry me across there on a stretcher. So someone had to go around and look for a short brow to put across between the pilot boat and the wharf before the emergency services would even contemplate taking me off the pilot boat. So here I am, still laying here with all this going on. And so the paramedics, they had to get the life jacket off me. So they were cutting the life jacket off, and I was totally paranoid that they'd bloody inflate it, because my arm was wrapped around my back, and I thought, God, if the jacket goes off and inflates, God forbid. And but anyway, they managed to cut that off, and then they gave me lots of morphine, and then they said, listen, we're going to have to get the arm around on the right side of you and put it in a sling before we can put you in a stretcher and get you off. And they said, this is going to hurt, and it hurt. I'll tell you what. So they dosed me up with morphine, and then they grabbed my arm and pulled it around and put it in the front of me. And I forget what I said, but it wasn't biblical anyway. And so that was that. Anyway, they got me to the hospital, and then that was that. And then I had the next day I had a pretty extensive operation. I've got a steel bar down my upper arm, my humerus, and the humerus was badly shattered. I had 4 broken ribs, bleeding kidney, strained pelvis. I couldn't walk for about a month. I couldn't drive a car for 2 months. I couldn't use my arm at all, even for a shower, for about 2 months. And it took me 10 months of serious physiotherapy and physiology to get proper use of my arm again. That's the medical side of things. Now, I've spoken to a number of emergency doctors after the event, and they said I was so fortunate I didn't bleed to death on the way back, because in your arm, next to your humerus and your main arteries in your arm go down there, and the arm was so badly broken, they said one little nick of the bone on the artery, I would have bled to death before they even got me back to the port centre anyway. I just would have gone unconscious and bled to death. So I was very, very fortunate that way. And even with the broken ribs, if I had 4 broken ribs, if they'd punctured my lung or kidneys or something, I would have died on the pilot boat. I wouldn't have even got back. So by God's grace, I'm here still and have a story to tell. So that was that. And so the aftermath is, there's the physical side, which I've touched on there, and there's the mental anguish of it as well. And it's not as simple as just getting back on the horse again. I mean, I'm a very experienced pilot. I'm one of the senior Czech pilots in Newcastle. I'm a training pilot. I train pilots and all that type of thing. And it's just not. It's a big barrier. It's a mental barrier to try and get back and try and do a pilot ladder transfer. And I have not been able to do it, and the doctors won't let me do it. And they say apart from the fact I still have 2 broken ribs and things like that. But they say, well, you know, it's called post-traumatic stress disorder, and it can happen after any sort of accident, a car accident, or any major sort of thing, life-threatening event, and it can stay with you for many years. And you know, the Port Authority provided me with some of the best psychologists in the country who've been involved in analysis of major train accidents and all sorts of things, and so that's one of the things that they provide, and to try and get you over, because there's two aspects to an injury. There's the physical injury, and there's the mental side of the injury as well. And the mental one is very hard to come back from. And as all the experts have told me, you've only with the psychological side of things, you've only got to be hesitant. And I said to them, you've only got to be hesitant one day on a pilot transfer, and you'll get killed. The day you sort of get to the ladder and have second thoughts because there's a bad memory comes back or whatever, that's the day you'll get killed. You'll just miss getting on the steps or whatever. So anyway, that's where that's at now, Kajanan. So that's where I am. So I went back to, initially, I never thought I'd go back and pilot again, and I was very upset about that. And I mean, piloting is my life. I have a passion for it. I absolutely love it to death. And but anyway, I thought I would never go back and be able to pilot again. A year ago, I did get back to helicopter transfers. So I've been piloting for the last year, but not pilot cover transfers, and that's where I'm at the moment. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can really feel the ordeal that you must have gone through, Malcolm, and it's very I mean, lucky of you to get out of that kind of a fall, because 3 meters fall is something like, you know, falling from the first floor of a building.
Well,
and
exactly.
That can be with the dynamics of the boat heaving up and down, could be a close impact.
It can double that.
Yeah, I can really feel that, and dislocation of your left arm was a horrible story. I mean,
unbelievable.
Yeah,
that's what the doctor said, Kajanan. You know, that the 3 meter fall is equivalent to hitting concrete at 30 kilometers an hour. That's how fast you're hitting the ground. That's without the movement.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and with your weight and your whole entire pilot gear on, it's a bigger fall. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, even when we slip off the road or while walking, and you know, a person like me who's 6 feet, and you know, when I have fallen many times, like by the bike accident and all that. But you know, I mean, it becomes but when you fall vertically down,
yes,
that is and with the impact of the boat heaving up and down, it could be very dangerous with the iron structures of the boat. You've been really lucky, Malcolm. Thank you very much for that.
Very lucky.
Complete narration.
And, yeah, exactly. And you know, at the end of the day, the 2 crew members on the pilot boat saved my life. And if I'd been mishandled differently, or they brought the boat back quickly, which the normal tendency would be to get me back as quick as they could, if they'd done that, the bouncing around, the doctors told me it would have cut the artery, I would have bled to death. So that's what would have happened. So to me, they're heroes. And when I talk about the 2 crew members on the pilot boat, I still get upset, and I still get tears in my eyes, because to me, they're heroes who saved my life. And I this is an aside, but I wanted the Port Authority to officially acknowledge what they did for me, and like big organisations, they wouldn't do it. I can't believe it. Our own Port Authority, and they wouldn't.
We fully agree.
I couldn't believe it. And so what I did, Vijay, I wrote them personal letters myself, and very personal letters with my gratitude that their actions saved my life that night, and I wrote a lot of things to them, and I said, I hope you keep these letters for your grandchildren's grandchildren, because you should be very proud of what you did. You're heroes and to the day I die, you're my 2 heroes. But officially, our Port Authority wouldn't recognise it. And even at the AIMPA conference I went to a year ago in Sydney, and I presented this whole accident, and Reshma was there, and I recommended to AIMPA that there should be some recognition for people who do outstanding things and save people's lives in our profession, and it doesn't happen. And anyway, so I wrote the article I sent you. I've also sent to the Nautical Institute in London, and it's coming out in next month's edition.
Oh, okay.
And you wouldn't believe it. It took a year. It took 2 years for the Port Authority of New South Wales to let me have that published by the Nautical Institute, because they were so scared of any legal implication of that. I sent it to the Indian one without getting their authority, so you've published it already. It doesn't matter. But
so Gillian Carson called me, and when she saw the article in the AIMPA journal, president of Nautical Institute, and she used that article in the college to teach the students. And she said, I was so thankful. I was trying to get the full account of Malcolm's accident, and I couldn't get anywhere, but you printed it in the AIMPA journal. I said, the whole thing of, printing Malcolm's article was to spread the awareness, because, Malcolm, I can also see your plight, and, you feeling grateful about this to the, pilot boat crew, because absolutely right sentiments, because, and this is how we are now putting it across to the Indian government as well, that we need to train our pilot boat crew to handle the situations very important, because they are not just crew. They are supposed to be a search and rescue trained, supposed to be a medical first aid parametric crew. So so that kind of we need to give them the paramedical kind of education where they can save somebody's life as your crew have saved yours.
Exactly, Kajan, and one of the there's a whole lot of things came out of my accident in the review process, and the very next day I was laying in hospital, and the harbour master Janine came and saw me, and I'd already written down a whole lot of things. I said, this has to be implemented right now, and even to this day some things haven't, but our work instruction, I think I mentioned earlier on, our work instructions for pilot transfer, and I've sent them to Reshma, and I said to Reshma, I said, you use them in India if you want for any, I don't care. And I without a doubt, I could say they're probably the best work instructions for pilot transfer anywhere in the world. We had very good ones anyway, and after my accident, I was part of a review panel that re-looked at our whole work instructions for pilot transfer and by pilot boat, and they're all redone again, and they're world class, and I encourage you to at least read them and take what you want from them and use them in your ports, because
absolutely. Let me stop you here. Very good. Because you please send those instructions to me on email, and I will ensure that they are printed to also. Not for anything, not for the but to get the pilots into the benefit of reading, and the port authorities to understand as to what happens and what needs to be done post accident like this. Definitely. Please send it to us, and we will print it. Welcome.
Exactly, and I spoke to coming out of my accident. I've always kept a valid first aid certificate, and we all have our master's medical anyway, but and all our pilot cutter crews have valid first aid certificates, but most of our pilots don't have valid first aid. So one of the things that came out of our accident, I said, every person who goes on a pilot boat should at least have a valid first aid certificate, like a senior first aid certificate, because the pilot might not be the one injured. It could be the crew member on the cutter on the pilot boat is injured. It could be the cutter master has a heart attack. So everyone on that pilot boat should be fully qualified first aid wise in case there's an accident, and that's what they did. They trained up all of the pilots. All the pilots have valid first aid certificates now, and we're also going to have trauma first aid training, because as we all know, what happens with a pilot in an accident or a crew member on a pilot boat, it's not getting a headache. You're losing arms, losing legs, or breaking things. So most of our people did trauma first aid. We had special trauma specialists come in and give us instruction on trauma first aid, how to deal with major things like losing arms and legs and stuff. And well, I don't. In Australia, the first aid kits on, I don't know what it's like in India, but in Australia, our first aid kits on pilot boats are regulated by AMSA, the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. And a pilot boat doesn't have any specific medical kit other than any other pleasure boat of its size commercial vessel. And one of the things I said, they need to review all that and have a special classification of medical equipment for pilot vessels, because the injuries that happen on a pilot vessel are specific to pilot vessels, and they're very big injuries. And